Kathy again from the National Trust. Let's talk about why mangroves are important. Number one, habitat. Many species rely upon mangroves for habitat. I bet you can think of many bird species you've seen in the mangroves before. I almost always hear yellow warblers when I'm out in the mangroves. I've seen flickers and woodpeckers. Oftentimes you'll see ospreys up in the top of the old mangrove snags looking for fish to eat. Our caiman parrot loves to nest in the tops of the old big black mangrove trees. But not just birds, often lots of other creatures as well, some of them in the water. Fishes, you'll see lots of different kinds of fish species swimming around in the mangroves. Lots of things growing on the mangrove roots as well. Lots of shellfish rely upon the mangroves. So very important habitat for lots and lots of different creatures. Number two, mangroves are also really important for storm protection. These mangroves will protect us when big storms come because the fact that they live right here on the seaside, they absorb a lot of the wind and wave energy when the storms come. And anything that's behind them, any of our human houses or buildings or roads are protected because those trees are there absorbing all that extra wind and wave energy that would hit our human structures first if not for those trees. All right, number three. Mangroves are also very important as a fish nursery. There's lots of species of fish that start out their lives in the mangroves, in the roots of the mangroves, because they're safe there. Think about a little baby fish, everything wants to eat it. If it can nip back in the mangroves into those roots and be safe from the predators that can't reach them in there, then they can survive to grow up. And then they often go out onto the coral reef. Many species that we're used to seeing on the reef actually started out their lives in the mangroves, including barracuda, snapper, parrotfish. So without these mangroves here, oftentimes those fish never get old enough to move out to the coral reef. Unfortunately, it's happened more than once that some countries that got rid of their mangroves altogether, their commercial fishery collapsed because the fish that they normally would catch for human consumption got eaten by other predators before they ever got big enough for humans to catch them. So if you like to fish or to eat fish, definitely want to keep our mangroves around for that. Also, I want to mention rainfall. The precipitation patterns that we enjoy here on Grand Cayman is in large part due to the central mangrove wetland, which is in the middle of the island. It's a huge, wonderful area. It's actually the biggest contiguous altogether area of mangroves in the Caribbean. So it's a very, very special place. And that is what causes a lot of our rainfall, because in the summer especially you can actually watch this happen. You see all of this evaporation taking place over the mangroves. The clouds form over the top of that, and then the prevailing winds move it westward, and then it will rain on the western side of Grand Cayman. Actually 40% of the rainfall over there is because of the mangroves. So imagine if that no longer occurred, if we paved over our central mangrove wetland, then Georgetown, Seven Mile Beach, West Bay, all of that, the ecology would look like East End. It would be much, 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 40% drier. So let's look after our mangroves if we like to have our nice verdant western side of Grand Cayman. Number five, mangroves are also really important for stabilizing the shoreline. It stops erosion from occurring. So check out these big roots that are holding all of that soil in place. If those trees weren't there, it would be much easier for the wind and the waves when it comes ashore here to eat away at the land and cause erosion to our shoreline. So those tree roots actually anchor that soil in place and keep it from being eroded away. Our mangroves are also important for keeping our water nice and clean and clear. Now, we talked about mangroves actually stabilize the shoreline because those roots hold the soil in place. Well, whenever it rains and the water is bringing the soil down to the sea, the mangrove roots, these beautiful things right behind me, they actually collect a lot of that soil before it can get out into the water and make it muddy looking. So if we did not have these mangroves here, then that soil would just be carried into the sea. It would make it look much more silty, and we wouldn't have our beautiful clear water. Mangroves also help to create land. Now, we discussed already about how they bind the soil together and they keep it from being eroded away. Well, that plus the leaves that fall down off of the tree, the little tiny micro roots that decay, all of that builds up soil over time. It's not a whole lot, it's only like 3 millimeters a year, and it's variable depending on where in the world your mangroves are. So here in Cayman, where we don't have any river input, it might be a little bit less. And then keep in mind that around the world, sea level rise averaged out over the whole world is something like 3 millimeters a year as well. So I don't know, if you've got a tree that can produce land even a little bit, even slowly, in a time of sea level rise that's about more or less the same, I think that's a pretty cool fact that those mangroves are doing and that are helping us out. So definitely want to keep those guys around. So mangroves are one of the best ecosystems in the whole world at carbon storage, which slows down climate change. It takes in carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere like all plants do doing photosynthesis, but mangroves are better than almost any other ecosystem because they don't just store that carbon dioxide away in the body of the plant, they also put it down into the soil underneath them. So if you guys have seen how deep that mud is underneath the mangroves, it actually is storing all that carbon dioxide, that black mucky mud that's underneath them that can be meters deep. That's all just hundreds of years of carbon storage occurring, and that can be permanent. So as long as we leave our mangroves alone, it's actually really, really helping us slow down climate change. Also tourism. Believe it or not, people come here and some of them really are anxious to go out and see the mangroves. I know we see them every day, so they don't seem special to us. But imagine people who live in the mountains or live in cold parts of the world where they don't have mangroves. They've heard about them. When they come here to Cayman, they want to see them, right? Everybody doesn't want to go see 7 Mile Beach and Stingray City every single day that they might be visiting. So there are businesses here in Cayman that's all they do is take people out to see the mangroves. So it's something that people want to do when they come here. I tell you, if you haven't done it yet, especially in a kayak, it's super fun to go back up into the mangroves. Try it, you'll see. They're fun, it's beautiful, great thing to have for tourism. And number 10, last but not least, is beauty and inspiration. Just in the last few years, scientists have really come to appreciate how important it is for people to get out into nature and to be outside and enjoy natural things. Wild areas like mangroves are perfect for that. For example, Central Park in New York City, that is a big park that's right in the middle of the huge city of New York City. Some place that they could have paved over many times and made a lot of money by doing so, but they refused to do it because they knew that it was important for all of those people living in that big city to be able to get outside and walk amongst the trees and smell the grass and listen to the birds sing. It's critically important for people to have some communication with nature occasionally. And tied to that is inspiration. There's sometimes being able to get outside into nature can open pathways in your brain and make you think outside of the usual ways that you're used to thinking, and can really inspire people to come up with some great ideas. And a perfect example of that is Martin Luther King Jr. It's a great story. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but Martin Luther King Jr., of course, is the civil rights leader in the United States that is famous for working hard for equal rights for all people. And when he needed to get away from all the chaos and just have some time to himself and into a quiet place, he would go over to the Bahamas and he would pay a fisherman to take him out into the mangroves so he would have a nice quiet place to sit and reflect. And apparently some of his best speeches, including the last one he ever wrote, was written there in the mangroves. And I think a perfect line that indicates that he was out there was he said, "I don't believe that that people are just flotsam and jetsam in the river of life, but that we have the power to take control of our own destiny." I mean, that's a paraphrase, but you get my point. Great ideas like that, being able to get outside and enjoy nature and be inspired in that way, it's a great reason to keep wild areas, including our mangroves, around. So let's take care of our wild areas here in Cayman. They're special. They do so much for human society here that we really need to be appreciative of, and let's protect them.